Bardsong Tavern.
When my scouts and I discovered the clearing, none of us spoke, for the wound before us was too vast for any quick word of fear or anger. Hundreds of ancient trees had vanished during a single season, leaving only bleeding stumps behind. And at the center of the devastation stood the guardian Treant Bramblethorn, staring silently across the ruined grove, as though he could no longer remember what had been taken from him. Such a thing should have been impossible. At the time, none of us understood how an entire forest could be stolen, while Bramblethorn still stood watch among the trees. To explain that, I must first tell you about the people who called those woods home. The wood elves of the high forest did not think of ourselves as rulers of the forest, for no wise elf would claim ownership over something so ancient. Our homes were woven among living branches rather than built upon cleared earth. Our watch platforms hid beneath leaves and vines, and our children learned bird calls, animal tracks, and the names of healing roots before they were ever trusted with bows. We took only fallen wood for our fires, hunted only what hunger required, and left seed behind wherever herbs were gathered, because every careless hand left an echo in the forest, and every echo eventually returned. Around us lived creatures that made outsiders speak in whispers. Dryads guarded ancient trees, sprites danced through moonlit glades, centaurs crossed hidden meadows beneath the canopy, and old rumors claimed that green dragons still slept within the deepest reaches of the high forest. Birds carried Bramblethorn news from distant valleys. Squirrels traveled forgotten paths between groves, and even the wind seemed to bring him stories gathered beneath the canopy. I remember rangers watching him rescue trapped fawns after storms and carry young dryad saplings to safer ground. To us, Bramblethorn was more than a guardian. He was family. For centuries we were right. Then greed arrived. Far beyond the forest borders, merchants paid fortunes for darkwood, livewood, bronzewood, and rare heartwood harvested from the high forest. Wherever such fortunes appeared, the Zhentarim rarely remained far behind. The Black Network saw no sacred groves, no ancient guardian, and no living history worth preserving when all of it could be measured, priced, and sold. Rather than challenge us openly, Zhentarim agents hired goblin cutters, orc mercenaries, human foremen, and an alchemist whose pale green tincture clouded memory and dulled awareness. The first doses entered Bramblethorn's roots during spring rains, when wet soil concealed every trace of the crime. More followed throughout the season, spreading slowly through his vast root network like a creeping fog beneath the earth. At first, Bramblethorn noticed only a growing weariness. Troubling thoughts slipped away before he could grasp them. While his mind struggled against the fog, the logging continued. Darkwood groves disappeared beneath enchanted saws. Livewood saplings vanished from protected hollows, and wagon after wagon of priceless timber departed beneath cover of darkness. Soon the forest itself began to change. Familiar trails grew strangely silent. Animals abandoned entire stretches of woodland. Even the oldest rangers felt that something was wrong, though none could yet name the cause. We had survived the devastating dragon wars. We had endured countless orc invasions, and winters harsh enough to split stone, yet few among us had ever seen the high forest fall silent in such a manner. I still remember that day of silence. Bramblethorn's great hand hovered above the empty space where a beloved tree had once grown. His amber eyes drifted slowly from stump to stump, with the sorrowful confusion of one struggling to remember a name that should never have been forgotten. "Grandfather," I asked softly, "who has done this beneath your branches?" Leaves drifted from his shoulders, though no wind stirred the grove. The ancient guardian remained silent for so long that I feared he had not heard me. Then he turned toward me.
"I knew once,"
he murmured. Those 3 words frightened me more than any roar could have done, yet something was clearly wrong. The longer we spoke with him, the stranger his answers became. Thoughts slipped away before he could finish them, and simple questions seemed to vanish from his mind like mist beneath the morning sun. That was when our druids began examining his roots, kneeling among damp moss and torn earth, they discovered narrow channels bored deep beneath the soil. A faint, bitter sweetness lingered there, unnatural and unmistakable. Traces of pale green alchemy still clung to the roots like a sickness that refused to leave. The Zhentarim had not defeated Bramblethorn through strength. They had severed his connection to the countless voices of the forest while robbing the woodland around him. Our rangers followed wagon ruts beneath moonlight through ravines and forgotten trails until they discovered a hidden logging camp beyond a ridge of black stone. Goblins worked beneath muffled saws. Orcs carried freshly cut trunks of rare wood, and human overseers prepared shipments bound for distant buyers. Among the camp records lay the cruelest truth of all. The Zhentarim had learned that every damaged grove forced Bramblethorn's roots to grow faster in desperate defense, and those new growths produced magical heartwood worth more than ordinary timber. They were not merely harvesting rare trees. They were farming the suffering of the forest's guardian, a cruelty so vile that grief and fury became impossible to separate. We struck before dawn. Arrows fell from the darkness. Roots erupted beneath tents. Centaur allies charged from the mist, while blink dogs tore through the confusion. The alchemist died beneath his own wagon as shattered tinctures hissed into the soil. By sunrise, the camp burned, yet victory brought little comfort, for the poison still remained within Bramblethorn. The days that followed were among the darkest I can remember. For 3 days and 3 nights, druids gathered beneath Bramblethorn's crown, while rangers stood watch around the grove. Ancient songs echoed beneath the shattered canopy as healers worked without rest, drawing corruption upward through bark and branch, while the forest itself seemed to groan around them. At first, nothing changed. The corruption lingered within his roots. His eyes remained clouded, and as the days passed, more and more elves gathered beneath the grove, unwilling to leave the guardian who had watched over their families for generations. Though no one spoke the fear aloud, all of us carried the same terrible question. What if Bramblethorn never remembered? The 4th morning arrived beneath a sky of pale gold, and as the final notes of the druid's song faded into silence, the entire grove seemed to hold its breath. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then Bramblethorn opened his eyes.
I remember their names. I remember every tree they took, every root they severed, and every voice that fell silent beneath my branches.
He murmured. For one perfect moment, grief gave way to joy. The youngest elves ran laughing toward their grandfather, embracing his ancient roots with tearful smiles, and the warmth that had long abandoned the grove finally returned beneath his branches. The high forest trembled beneath the weight of his grief, and far beyond the grove, roots began to stir beneath the earth. Across Faerun, merchants still paid fortunes for rare woods, and new plans continued to take shape in distant cities. The greed that had wounded the forest had not vanished. Neither had Bramblethorn. Years later, one of our rangers discovered the ancient guardian standing within that strange grove of young trees. Moonlight filtered through the canopy as Bramblethorn knelt beside the body of a dead timber thief, whose companions had abandoned him to the wilderness. The ranger watched as one great hand opened, revealing a single seed resting upon his palm. With all the care of a gardener planting the rarest flower, Bramblethorn placed it within the corpse's mouth before covering the body with earth and leaves. When the ranger returned the following spring, another sapling stood among the others. Many who heard the story spoke of justice, others spoke of vengeance. I have lived beside the high forest long enough to believe the truth is far older than either. The high forest was never merely timber waiting to be harvested. It was a living history older than kingdoms, a refuge for countless creatures, and a thread woven into the world long before the first crown was forged or the first kingdom raised its banners. Deep within the western groves, where young trees swayed above forgotten bones, Bramblethorn still listened to the countless voices carried by birds, roots, and wind. The forest remembered, and for those who saw only profit where others saw life, the grove was always ready to welcome another tree.
Thank you for watching. Share, like, and subscribe.